Recording in progress. Recording stopped.
Are we on? We're not recording, but Yeah, let's do that, please.
Recording in progress.
Colleagues, could you take your seats, please? Good evening. Good evening, colleagues. Welcome to our first official regularly scheduled meeting of the City Council. It's great to see many of you here in person on a slippery evening. I know a number of folks are with us remotely this evening, and that's certainly understandable given the weather conditions, but I'm glad so many of you made it in. Just a note, all of you should have on your desks a certificate of receipt of the open meeting law materials. Everyone should have received those. Please fill that out and provide that to Ms. Moore. For those of you who are remote, if you could fill it out, scan it to her, or bring it in next time you're in the clerk's office. But let's all try to get that done, if not this evening, then in the next couple of days. Councilor Humphrey, would you start us off with the Pledge of Allegiance this evening?
I actually don't do that typically, but I would. Can we recognize someone from Newton that's under the rules as well?
I will ask Councilor Kalis to do the pledge. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you all. For those who are watching, we are both audio and videotaped this evening. We have a pretty light agenda. One item on second call that I think is most likely going to go very quickly. So I'm going to start off with recognizing Chair Kelly of the Land Use Committee, who's participating remotely. Chair Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. President.
Forgive me, I'm new to this virtual stuff.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Land Use Committee met on January 9th, and we took up the following items. Number 11-24, which was a request to exceed FAR and vertically extend a non-conforming setback in an accessory building at 887 Commonwealth Avenue. That was approved by Land Use 7-0. Item 12-24 was a request to allow ground floor residential use. Oh, this one is on second call, so I don't need to report that out, correct?
That is correct, Councilor Kelly.
We'll get to that later. Item 13-24, request to further extend non-conforming FAR at 140 Dickerman Road. That was approved by Land Use 7-0. Then there was an extension of time, number 14-24, extension of time to exercise a special permit number 419-22 at 148 Auburndale Ave. That was approved 7-0. Mr. President, tell me whether you want me to read into the record all of the Class 2 auto dealers licenses by number and with the approval altogether, or whether I can do them as a group, or whether you need them separately.
Why don't you do, excuse me, why don't you do this? Why don't you read each one by just name and number and just go through it quickly that way, please?
Just what I was hoping you would say. We had a bunch of Class 2 auto dealer licenses. The first was number 15-24, and we had 16-24, 17-24, 18-24, 19-24, and 20-24, and these were all approved 7-0.
And that concludes your report, Councilor Kelly, but you do have some public hearings to assign?
I do have some public hearings to assign. These are all to be assigned for January 23rd. They're on page 13 of our reports docket tonight. The first is number 68-24, which is a request to amend a special permit number 40-97 parens 2 and allow a freestanding sign at 269-287 Grove Street. The next one is number 69-24, which is a request to allow a parking stall within 5 feet of the street and to waive a parking stall depth at 113 Edinburgh Street. Finally, number 70-24, also still on page 13, request to amend and approve comprehensive sign package and special permit number 218-22 at 1 through 55 Boylston Street. And that concludes my report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Chair Kelly. And let me, before we go to Councilor Baker for the Zoning and Planning Committee, let me identify that we have Councilors Kelly, Downs, Gentile, Greenberg, and Krinsman, and Lipoff, all with us remotely. Everyone else who's here tonight is in the chamber.
Point of order.
Yes.
Just to clarify, the Land Use Committee had 6 members present on the 9th of January, and so none of those votes could have been 7-0. They would have all been 6-0.
I believe we had 7 members.
You did not have Councilor Laredo or Councilor Lipoff.
Councilor Lipoff's not on the committee.
Oh, he's not on the committee. I stand corrected.
We have Councilor Farrell now from Ward 8. We only were missing Councilor Laredo, so there were 7 members present, and all those votes are recorded accurately.
Okay, thank you. I stand corrected. Sorry.
It's quite all right. Councilor Baker for the Zoning and Planning Committee, please.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I want to thank members of the council who took the trouble to attend the meeting, both in person and virtually. Our committee had a deliberation about what we're planning to do over the term. There was no action taken other than to hold items for future discussion. There is, however, a late filed item I would ask for suspension of the rules for the council to vote to accept on first call, and that's item 7424, found on page 20 of the docket, and it's an item to allow the discussion regarding the 40B process for safe harbor. That's the whole process of the affordable housing statute, and we anticipate taking that up at the next Zoning and Planning Committee on the 22nd of this month.
All in favor of suspending the rules to allow for the late filed item, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. It's accepted.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have the Programs and Services Committee. Chair Krinsman.
Thank you, Mr. President. There is no report this evening. I will mention, though, that we're meeting on Wednesday and we'll be discussing our work plan for the term. So folks are welcome to come and join us. I know there was a lot of interest in the tree ordinance earlier this evening at our meeting. So if folks want to come and talk about that as part of our plan, it's the night to do it.
I'll leave that to the Programs and Services Committee. Next, we have the Public Safety and Transportation Committee. Chair Grossman.
Thank you, Mr. President. There's no report this evening. We are also meeting tomorrow night, and we do have one regularly docketed item and then a second docket item to discuss our work plan as well. Thank you.
Wonderful. Next, we have the Public Facilities Committee. Councilor Albright.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also have no report, and we will also be meeting tomorrow night, and I hope it's a hybrid meeting, so I plan to be there in person, and I hope others will as well. I do have one public hearing to assign.
Go ahead, please, Councilor Albright.
This hearing is for January 17th, tomorrow night. It's a request for Everett M. Brooks Company on behalf of the property owners is petitioning for the extension of the city's water main and main drain on Chapin Road and associated easements, which is required as part of the approved subdivision certificate of action.
Thank you, Chair Albright. The Finance Committee, Councilor Gentile.
Thank you, Mr. President. The finance report begins on the bottom of page 10. There are 2 items to report out tonight. The first is docket item 34-24. The city clerk requested the acceptance of an anonymous donation of $10,000 to the city of Newton in memory of former councilor George Mansfield. That was approved 8-0. And the next item is 35-24. It's Her Honor the Mayor requesting authorization to accept and expend the sum of $22,248 from the WPF grant for the purpose of installing 6 EV Level 2 chargers. This item was also approved 8-0. The other items were held, and I would move the report.
Thank you, Councilor Gentile. And finally, Councilor Danberg for the Real Property Reuse Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have not met yet, but our first meeting is Thursday, January 25th, at which time we will be having our first discussion on the Walker Center. That meeting will be at 7 p.m. It will be hybrid, but anyone who either is on the committee or not on the committee but would like to join us is always welcome. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chair Danberg. With that, Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please, on first call?
Councillor Albright.
Aye.
Councillor Baker.
Aye.
Councillor Bixby.
Aye.
Councillor Block.
Aye.
Councillor Danberg.
Aye.
Councillor Downs.
Aye.
Councillor Farrell.
Aye.
Councillor Gentile.
Aye.
Councillor Getz.
Aye.
Councillor Greenberg.
Aye.
Councillor Grossman.
Aye.
Councillor Humphrey.
Aye.
Councillor Kalis.
Aye.
Councillor Kelly.
Aye.
Councillor Krinsman.
Aye.
Councillor Leary.
Aye.
Councillor Lipoff.
Aye.
Councillor Lobovitz.
Aye.
Councillor Lucas.
Aye.
Councillor Malachy.
Aye.
Councillor Mickley.
Aye.
Councillor Oliver.
Aye.
Councillor Wright.
Aye.
President Laredo.
Aye.
Motion carries 24 yeas, 0 nays.
Great. So we have, folks, we have one item on second call. It's a land use item. Chair Kelly, will you report that out, please?
Just getting to my mute button. Yes, this is item 12-24. It was a petition request to allow for a ground floor residential use to allow 3 stories and a 39.3-foot height to exceed FAR and associated parking waivers at 209-211 Adams Street. This received full support of the Land Use Committee with on second call because there were several requests that we made of the development team to look at a few suggestions, for instance, to use permeable paving for the 5 surface parking spaces instead of asphalt, to consider adding a little bit more green, perhaps a tree or some other planted materials. And I believe there was one other request that planning referred to today, but does it make sense too for the person who put it on second call to present why that happened?
Why don't you, if you're done giving your report, Chair Kelly, I'll ask the person who put this on second call to,
Okay.
I'm sorry, Chair Kelly, I wasn't present at the meeting, but the clerk reminds me that it was voted subject to second call, so no one placed it there.
Ah, correct. Okay.
So
Well, that's a brief update by me. Other committee members can speak to what they wanted to hear, or we hopefully will hear from if some of those suggestions have been taken, if there are any changes for us to see and approve tonight.
all right, thank you, Chair Kelly. Councilor Leary.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, I made the motion to put it on a second call, subject to discussion. And we did get our questions substantially answered in a memo that was in the Friday packet. I was concerned about a lot of impervious surface and where the trees were, and a little the landscaping plan, and we got that information. I had a few other questions just to bring up, but I'm not going to hold up this project, which is a very good project in many ways. But I'm wondering, while we're having all these storms and we're seeing climate change with heavy rains, if we should be making more of an effort to have less impervious surface. This project, I think, could do more in terms of that. I also wanted to discuss universal design, but I did speak with the attorney today and explained this wouldn't work right now for this project, but to keep it in mind in future projects. And then lastly, this does have 2 parking spots per unit, which is, in my mind, excessive for a very walkable village area. And I just wanted to raise that to my colleagues, and that maybe that's something we could talk about. I am going to vote for the project this evening, and I'm not holding it up on that. I just wanted to raise those issues as we deliberate on future projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Leary. Is there anyone else who wants to speak on this project? Councilor Oliver.
Great, thank you, Mr. President. As a Ward 1 councilor, I believe that this project does represent what we've all been striving for. What we continuously hear out of land use is talk to the neighbors, talk to the neighbors, talk to the neighbors, get the neighbors on board, work with the neighbors. I agree with my fellow Ward 1 councilor that this project probably has the ability to be a tiny bit better, but at the end of the day, the neighborhood and the petitioner went back and forth several times to improve this project. I'm going to be supporting this project. I believe that the concerns that have been raised are legitimate. We should be bringing those forward in future projects. I do want to recommend or remind, more to the point, I want to remind everyone here that we heard some testimony during land use that I think is worth everybody having a listen to, and that is regarding parking in the situation that is perhaps exacerbated in Nonantum, and in particular on this particular side street. There is an acute lack of parking, which I think is why there are not only 2 parking spaces per unit, but it's appropriate in this particular instance to have 2 spaces per unit. And I just wanted to kind of reiterate, not only those facts, but remind us all that we are trying to increase the number of housing units in our city. And that is going to bring more people, and that is going to bring some number of cars into the city, at least for the short term. We're going to have to recognize that that reality is going to exist for some number of years before our friends at the MBTA can really kind of, pardon the pun, get back on track with what they need to do. But thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to be heard on this item? Councilor Downs.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wasn't going to speak on this item. I think this is a good project generally. I do agree with Councilor Leary that the parking is excessive. Most of our trips are not our trips into work. Most of our trips are local, and this is a very walkable neighborhood. One of the things that I think it behooves us to know about and to educate ourselves about is the effect of adding parking to a walkable neighborhood. And as I mentioned in the discussion on land use, 2 identical neighborhoods with identical transit access, one of which has lots of off-street parking and one of which does not. The one that has lots of off-street parking has lots of traffic and driving and lots of competition for the on-street parking spaces. Now, there are the off-street parking spaces that get added to the parking supply, but it's the on-street parking spaces that become the ones that we share and that become contested. This is material that any of us can read up on, but adding parking spaces, and I understand this is a constrained neighborhood, and despite my qualms about the parking, I will be voting for this project, but let's be clear that adding parking spaces off-street is something, and I can forward you the studies, that adds to the traffic and adds to the parking demand in a neighborhood. Nonantum is a beautifully walkable neighborhood. Yes, there's a lot of competition for on-street parking. That will continue as long as we continue to rely on the automobile. to get everywhere, and as long as we prefer places that have lots of off-street parking.
Thank you, Councilor Downs. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on the item? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Counselor Albright.
Aye.
Counselor Baker.
Aye.
Counselor Bixby.
Aye.
Counselor Block.
Aye.
Counselor Danberg.
Aye.
Counselor Downs.
Aye.
Counselor Farrell. Excuse me.
Aye.
Counselor Gentile.
Aye.
Counselor Getz.
Aye.
Counselor Greenberg.
Aye.
Counselor Grossman.
Aye.
Counselor Humphrey.
Aye.
Counselor Kalis.
Aye.
Counselor Kelly.
Aye.
Counselor Krinsman.
Aye.
Counselor Leary.
Aye.
Counselor Lipoff.
Aye.
Counselor Lobovitz.
Aye.
Counselor Lucas.
Aye.
Counselor Maliki.
Aye.
Counselor Mickley.
Aye.
Counselor Oliver.
Aye. Aye.
Counselor Wright.
Aye.
President Laredo.
Aye.
Motion carries 24 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Vice President Kalis, do I have a motion to adjourn? All right. We are adjourned at 8:07 p.m. Please, the roads are getting icy. If you're here, please drive home carefully. And thank you very much.